Hello everyone, and welcome to Raw vs. Wrestling for Monday Night Raw, December 19th, 2011. There are good and bad, and I'll go off and say there are good bad moments about Raw last night. I think a lot of the good outweighed the bad in most cases, but I'll go ahead and start with what I considered to be the bad moments of the night, or just moments I really didn't care for in general. First of all, I'm going to start off with the Divas match with Alicia Fox and Beth Phoenix. There was no point of actually putting Alicia Fox over in such a quick match. It was probably, what, a minute, maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes tops for the match itself. Alicia Fox got off 2 moves and then got a clean pinfall victory. And then after the match, she literally gave probably one of the worst one-liners I've heard anybody do. It had no relevance to her, to what she had just done in ring. It was just a bad line. It came off horrible, and honestly, it was just bad. In my personal opinion, it was very bad. The next moment that I really didn't end up caring for all that much, once again, they did Jinder Mahal versus Sheamus, and I mean, they're clearly not building Jinder Mahal to be as big as Sheamus right now, so why are they continually putting him in the ring with him at this point to get squashed over, unless they just really have nothing for Sheamus to do outside of just being there to beat somebody up. And honestly, doing this match again, it was pointless. It had no use for being on Raw, and yeah, it's not that the match was bad, it was just, there was no point to it, again. And as well for this match right here as well, the Cody Rhodes, Santino Marella, excuse me there for a second. The Cody Rhodes, Santino Marella. You had a nice little backstage segment. It wasn't all that great. It was pretty much Cody Rhodes doing his talk about what happened with Booker T the night before and where he was about to go. Santino Marella came in, interrupted, and he started doing his normal comedy shtick. It was all right. It wasn't anything great, and then it led to their match later that night. Actually, it was pretty much right after the segment. It was again another squash match with Cody Rhodes going over. Once again, there was no point to this match. It didn't really need to be there, and honestly, at this point in time, I feel Santino Marella's run, at least with me personally, I thought he was funny and a great comedy act for a long time, but I think it's finally run its course, and maybe it's time for them to go with a different character area, or maybe it's just time for him to get out of the company as it is, but who knows? Well, who knows at this point? But that was pretty much the only stuff that I ended up not really liking on Monday Night Raw. The stuff I did end up liking, the continuation of the Wade Barrett-Randy Orton match, or the Randy Orton feud, not the match, but they had another one-on-one match. And what I ended up liking was the fact that they obviously didn't want to give Wade Barrett another victory over Randy Orton, so they found a way to put him over without giving him the victory. He lost the match by DQ, thumb to the eye, all that good stuff, and then at the end of the after the match, put Randy Orton through a table. It was a nice way, in my opinion, to continue this feud. It was a good way, since at this point they didn't want to give him another victory over Orton, to actually put him over Orton versus having Orton go over on him in some way on that night. Another thing I ended up liking, the John Cena came out to address the whole Kane interference from the week before, and it's obvious that they're obviously going for John Cena versus Kane at some point. Having Mark Henry out there was a nice little added touch, because he was out there for last week. It kept consistency from the week before, and having the both of them out there while when Kane came out there, kind of still gave the indication of who's he truly going after. In the end, it was Cena. And that's where the obvious feud is going right now. They're going to have Cena and Kane for a little while. It's a nice feud for Kane to come back to. Great to see the mask back on him. And just putting him over Cena that night was probably the best way to start off the feud. And they'll probably continue this whole monster type deal for a little bit. until they have their match, whichever would be on whatever pay-per-view it would be on, whether it's a Royal Rumble or the following pay-per-view after that. So that was another thing I really liking about Raw. I actually did like the promo with Big Show, and I'll continue that into the following scene afterwards. That Big Show had his promo basically saying about the World Heavyweight Championship. He won the match. He won the match at TLC, and then Daniel Bryan cashed in on him after he got knocked out. And he was trying to play the nice guy angle. That he's like, he had been the one influencing Bryan to try to cash it in before WrestleMania and everything on that aspect, and then it gets cashed in on him. And he was trying to play the nice guy angle. Then the announcer decided to go off and say, he's like, why are you being so nice about it? It eventually struck a chord, saying that he had the shortest reign in WWE history of so many seconds. And that kind of struck that chord. He got a little bit angry and then just said, I'm fine, and walked away. Now, hopefully this either he'll continue this gimmick into a match with Daniel Bryan, or this will turn him heel of some kind. Obviously, they already have one monster heel on SmackDown. I don't think they need a second one. They might do it. Well, actually, Kane's going over to Raw now to do the feud with Cena, so he's not on SmackDown anymore. So they don't really need two monster heels on SmackDown, so maybe they'll just keep this as like a respectful type deal, and they'll have a match down the road, or they could just turn Big Show full-fledged heel again. We'll see where they go with that. I'm going to take that aspect into the last portion, which I really did end up liking as, somewhat of an internet fan myself. The scene you saw last night was probably a scene you would never expect you to ever see. The fact that, not the fact that they put titles on CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, and Zack Ryder, the fact that they put titles on them at the same time is a scene that you thought you would never see. Considering that most of their following was through for Punk and Daniel Bryan, most of their following was through independent wrestling organizations and Ring of Honor, and then Zack Ryder's his following was pretty much made through his YouTube show. So a lot of people didn't think that you would see a scene like that at the exact same time, but you figured you would see titles on them at some point, just not at the same moment. So it was really nice. It was really good to actually make that scene happen in Philadelphia, considering the higher Ring of Honor, the higher Ring of Honor fans are there. A lot of Ring of Honor fans are there, and then you had the old ECW crowd, which kind of had a different outlook of what they look at in the wrestling and aspect of everything. So it was nice to put that scene out there in Philadelphia, because Punk put it right. If there was any city that would truly appreciate it, it would have been that city. Maybe that city or Chicago itself would have appreciated that type of scene. And that eventually led, but they're talking over all that it led into a six-man tag with the three of them versus Alberto Del Rio, The Miz, and Dolph Ziggler later that night. And that match itself was just a really good, fun six-man tag team match. And it really did a lot, putting over not just the three champions, but I think it just put over everybody in proper aspects, even somewhat put over Alberto Del Rio, even though he did eventually tap out to Daniel Bryan. I think it just worked out great for everybody in that aspect. The only bad thing about the match was that there was no one really for Daniel Bryan's sake. He's considered SmackDown on that aspect, and he has the SmackDown title. It would have been nice to see one of the SmackDown contenders to be in this tag team match versus having Del Rio, Miz, and Dolph Ziggler, all three pretty much Raw guys, and going after the Raw titles. But that was the only real downside to the match. Outside of that, it was a great match, and it was an overall pretty decent night of Monday Night Raw. Outside of those bad things I mentioned at the beginning, So I'll go ahead and give Raw itself. It was pretty much like TLC. It was a 7 out of 10 show. It wasn't a bad show. You had some really good aspects to it, but you also had some really bad aspects to it too. So that's pretty much all I've got for the Raw versus Wrestling this week. And I thank you guys for watching.